all those things I imagined didn't exist, but all happened because I was able to see a vision in my mind. And, one of the things in entrepreneurship is not giving up when others would. And I've just stuck with it over and over and over because I believe in my team, I believe in myself, and I believe in the possibility of the business. If you imagine big ideas, you never know, they might actually happen.
Can you talk about how you went from 25-year-old failure to whatever it is you're doing right now?
Of course, it's a great question, Jeff. So first of all, these overnight success stories take a long time, as someone said. It's been 32 years. So while it took me 8 years to get to $1 million in revenue, and then 10 years to franchise, and 15 years before I had a franchise organization that was actually making money, it's been a slow process to get to hypergrowth. It's taken time. So while I appreciate we're saying, hey, don't let this blow your head up, I feel great about what we've built because we've done it right over time. We've made tons of mistakes and learned from them, but we've built a team, and that team has given us the ability to build and scale. So you talk about a ceiling. I've hit a ceiling so many times, and I always want to burst through and I want to continue to learn, but I've realized I'm not the smartest person in the room. I never am. And I surround myself with smarter, brighter people. And I ask them, what would you do? What should we do? I reach out and I call mentors. I pick up the phone and just reach out and connect with someone else to find out, what are they doing? How are they doing it? A couple of guests you've had, Chris Voss. I had dinner beside Chris. I was at an entrepreneur event and I said, can I sit here? And started picking the guy's brain on negotiating. I mean, there are so many smart people in this world. Why reinvent things when you can just reach out and ask someone questions and learn? John Asseroff, who you've had on your show, who's a buddy of mine, I met him years ago because we connected on this level of visioning and learning about how you can see possibilities in your mind and somehow just bring those to fruition, the law of attraction. And there's a bit of a magic there. So learning from others would be how I always burst through that ceiling. But I'm not afraid to say to someone, I need you to run this part of the business because I really am not as good at this as you are. I don't understand it, or you've got, greater talents than I. And so we're a $500 million business currently. And that's been from me getting out of my own way. Most of what I do today is visioning out the future and trying to think, how are we going to innovate and build a greater brand, how to take care of our people and our culture. But I don't execute on things anymore. I've got people in place who are way better at executing than this ADD, still learning, figuring out life type of guy.
Did you, back when you were small and you did have to be the guy to execute in a lot of cases, were you naturally also kind of a visionary leader who executed on behalf of your own self? As a visionary, kind of who was leading yourself, or was it all execution and you emerged or evolved as a visionary later on?
That's a great question. I think I've always been a visionary in terms of how I've shown up in life. I don't know if others saw me as a visionary and wanted to follow until things like I wrote my first painted picture, a 5-year look into the future, 1 page, double-sided, wrote out this vision. And I said we'd be on the Oprah Winfrey show, we'd be in the top 30 metros in North America, we'd be the FedEx of junk removal with clean, shiny trucks, friendly uniformed drivers. All those things I imagined didn't exist, but all happened because I was able to see a vision in my mind. And you mentioned that, one of the things in entrepreneurship is not giving up when others would. And I've just stuck with it over and over and over because I believe in my team, I believe in myself, and I believe in the possibility of the business. So I think I've always been a bit of a visionary, but I don't think I understood vision or the power of until I started seeing some of these things happen. When we got on the Oprah Winfrey show, after everybody said, you guys are smoking some hope dope, good luck here, that's never going to happen. We made it happen. We made the business become this iconic brand over time, but it showed me that if you imagine big ideas, you never know, they might actually happen. You continue to see that picture and stick with it and rally people that want to get there with you.
I mean, your book, WTF, Willing to Fail, as I read it on the Amazon description, it basically said it's something, forgive me, it's been a little bit, but it's something to the effect of it's going to prove to you that what you have to succeed is already inside you, which is very similar to my mission for this podcast and this show. So maybe, can you talk a little bit about what you mean? Like, do you really think that anybody out there has what it takes to be successful?
I think people do. I think it is within us. I think that we have the ability to make mistakes over and over, because we all do. But something that I think was learned for me after writing the book was, wow, there is power in failure. I realized that by making mistakes and then learning from them, they all became gifts for me to get to a better place. So 5 years into my business, I fire my entire company, 11 people. I've got the wrong people, and I feel one bad apple spoils the whole bunch. I had at least 9 bad apples. And I sat them down and I said, I'm sorry. And I took ownership. I'm sorry that I have not given you what you need to succeed in this business with me. I haven't believed in you. You haven't believed in me. I might not have even found the right people. I don't know, but I did not give this a fighting chance. And it was a big leadership lesson for me. So I fired my team and started again. What a massive failure. But today we win awards for being best workplace in Canada, the United States, all sorts of great accolades, which just talk about our care for people. We wouldn't have gotten to that point of building a great culture if I didn't fail so miserably and realize those are the wrong people. Now figure out how to find the right people and how to treat them right. Failures are gifts.
Yeah, I read an article that told that story. If I remember, it was 1994. Mm-hmm. You had 11 people. You let them all go, and I love that you owned it as a failure of leadership. And I also loved what you said in that article, which was hire happy people. If you want to build a good organization, start by hiring people that at least have the foundation, the potential for joy. Like, you're never going to build a joyful organization off of people that are like chronically mopey and depressed. But how do you do that in the trash business?
You can do it in any business. It doesn't, while we're in the junk business and 1-800-GOT-JUNK is about hauling away people's junk, you can imagine it's customer experience, it's clear communication, it's having friendly truck team members show up and greet the customer with a smile and do a sweep up at the end. There's lots of little things involved, but we are a happy, optimistic brand and business. All our group of companies are. And you start by hiring happy people, because I think it was the job of our parents to give us optimism and to teach us how to show up in life with a happy attitude. As an employer, I can't teach someone to be happy. They already have to be happy. If I go into a Starbucks and no matter which one on the planet, I get that barista giving me a drink by name and they have some fun with me and they joke around, they smile, they're grateful. Starbucks does a great job recruiting. Yeah. And so we've tried to borrow from others who've done well and said, we're going to create magic here by hiring people that know how to smile and know how to make people feel appreciated and welcomed, not just in our organization, but as customers. It's a pretty simple recipe.
Twould seem so. Though it's maybe simple, but not easy.
Not easy, but Jeff, it's interesting because that's where, again, you talked about my leadership lesson that I owned. I had those 11 people, and I still to this day don't know if they were the right people or the wrong people. They might have been optimistic people if I gave them the right direction and chance. But the reality is, as a young leader who was 25 years old, who'd never really led a group of people, I needed to learn how to lead and how to believe in people and how to give them a vision of the future and why we were building this business. This was not about hauling people's junk. This was about giving them their space back. This was about getting rid of an eyesore in their home that was driving them nuts. And the more efficiently we did it, but with a smile, it made us stand out from all other brands. And we've done the same thing, just applying it to other fragmented services, not just junk removal, but now Wow One Day Painting, where we paint people's homes in a day. And also with Shack Shine, where we do people's windows, gutters, Christmas lights.
Man, you don't have a Wow One Day Painting franchise in Atlanta, do you?
We do. We just opened one up.
Okay. So after this show, I'm going to get their number because I got a house that I'm trying to sell. It's a remnant flip house from a 3-year-old real estate investing deal that whatever, I won't bore you with the details, but the last thing we're waiting on is painting and the lady's taken 2 weeks and it's like punch out list stuff. So my point is I totally get the demand. The idea of somebody coming in and knocking out a house painting job in one day, I would totally pay a premium for that.
Well, and there's no rush. It's just proper coordination and planning. When I got my house painted, when I discovered this company, Wow One Day Painting, they were called One Day Painting. I looked around, I had 3 different estimates, and the first 2 came in and cigarette smoke and showed up late, and they weren't very professional. And I thought, oh gosh, these guys are going to move in. You know, they're going to be 2 weeks. They're going to pull a Murphy Brown and actually just start living with me. But the third guy who started One Day Painting, he said, when we agree on painting day, it'll be done by the end of that day. Floor to ceiling, moldings, trim. I show up at the end of the day. The feeling I got was wow. So when I bought the company, I called it Wow One Day Painting. Why have the disruption? Everyone wants things done now. And the last thing you want is for something that could be done in a day with 16 people is what it took to paint my home. One person in every room. Some rooms had 2 that were big enough. They got it done and there was no rush. They did it with great quality. So speed and quality can go together. And that's been the basis for our brand that we've built.
Huh, that's interesting. Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm actually dead serious. I'll take that referral. Awesome. But no, so you have, I want to go back to 20 something Brian, right? Leadership lesson learning Brian. And by the way, I'll say, you know, I'm on what I would consider my 3rd successful company. And at the end of the day, the law of, you know, John Maxwell's law of the lid basically says your organization can only grow to your ability to lead it. I have not found a deeper truth in business. You know, your development of results in business will mirror your development as a leader in business, and your development as a leader in business is what must drive your results in business. And so can you talk a little bit more about that? I mean, to create, like, you're not in a business. I mean, there aren't a lot of barriers to entry to the junk hauling business, right? I mean, your story of how you started the company was what you put your life savings of $1,000. It was like $700 for the truck and a few $100 for flyers or something like that, right? Exactly. Anybody can do that. So clearly you've, as a leader, despite your initial failings, you've developed some acumen that's allowed you to take what's a fairly, fungible, commoditized business and become literally one of the most famous, like, iconic. I mean, 1-800-GOT-JUNK. I texted my wife. I was like, hey, I'm about to interview the founder of 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And my wife's not in business. She's a mom, 4 kids. And frankly, we don't even have a franchise around here. And I live in a small town. But immediately she's like, oh my God, that's so awesome. You know, congrats. Good luck. Like, everybody knows you. So you've taken this commodity business, turned it into a multinational iconic brand. That's gotta be, I mean, don't let it get a big head, but like, that shows some pretty epic leadership. So, you know, we have a mutual friend, Evan Carmichael, right? And he was on the show and he said something that has just not stopped ringing in my ears. And it's been a year, I bet, since Evan came on. And he said, you know, the biggest problem on planet Earth is that people don't believe in themselves. And you clearly believe in yourself, right? I mean, well, your story, I mean, we can dig into the details of your story, but I mean, everything about it, right? You know, you bet on yourself, even when it almost seemed like you were sabotaging yourself. Like, I'm going to quit going to class in high school, but then, I think I'm going to go to college, but I'm going to piss my dad off so he won't pay for it anymore. And, you know, and then I'm going to blow that off and go buy, spend my life savings on a truck and start hauling junk. Like, you know, so externally, it almost seems like, oh my gosh, this guy's making it hard on himself. But that's what people do when they believe in themselves. And to the outside world, they look nuts because they're doing things most people won't do because they believe in themselves. I'm kind of the same way. I do things that people think are nuts, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. But I never look at it as, oh, it didn't work because I just can't do stuff. But I feel like you and I are not the norm. Most people have a pretty crippling case of self-doubt. And I'm curious, let's start with, how come you don't? How did you escape the matrix of self-doubt in this world? I know my own story, how I managed to wriggle out of it. It's because I was a misfit from day one and I never tried to fit in. But I'm curious, what's your backstory? How come you aren't so crippled like everyone else?
Well, it's funny that you say that you never tried to fit in. I believe in the Dr. Seuss quote, why fit in when you were born to stand out? As a kid, I went to 14 schools from kindergarten to college. I never graduated from college. I never graduated from high school. I got my kindergarten diploma, but I moved around a ton, with partially because of my parents, partially because I was a bad kid and I kept getting kicked out because I was ADD. I couldn't focus. Every teacher I had, except one I can remember, did not believe in me. They told me, you're not smart, you can't do this, you're the class clown, you have no focus, you're never going to do anything in life. So I actually had a real lack of confidence. I didn't believe in myself necessarily, but I believed in my ideas. If I got an idea on how to make some money, on some little scheme that I was trying to build out and some plan, and there were just those crazy ideas. I believed when I bought that truck that I could find a way to use it to pay for college. And I stuck with it. And I'm not the best executor in the world because it took me 8 years to get to $1 million in revenue. Our franchise partners get there way faster. One of them did it in a full year. So it's interesting. I am just kind of thinking here in my out loud. I didn't fit in. I didn't believe in myself, but I saw some ideas I believed in. And then I started to gain some confidence from, wow, this actually worked.
So 8 years to make $1 million, and that's top line $1 million.
Totally.
Yeah. So it's not like 8 years to be a millionaire.
No,
it took much longer than that.
Yeah.
So what fuels you every day? I mean, you're not in a glamorous industry, although I appreciate, by the way, I just want to say, I love that you said it's not about the junk that we're hauling away. It's about the space that we're giving back. I mean, that was beautiful. That hit, as a marketer, like that hit me, but still, it's not glamorous what you're doing. And you're doing it day in, day out, grinding for never mind years. I mean, decades before you're on Oprah and you're this big famous success story. What's powering you every day? Why aren't you just going, man, life would be easier if I would just get a day job?
I love possibility. I love seeing a possibility and going, you know what? We could actually make this happen. So Simon Sinek, who is incredibly famous, I remember when he slept on my couch at my house before he was famous, he approached me years ago and said, hey, Brian, I love your brand. I want to somehow be a part of the marketing. And he did some amazing things for us. As he started working through his start with your why concept, he helped me uncover my why. And I'm eternally grateful. He went into my childhood, asked me a ton of stories and questions and wrote out all these answers. And he said, Brian, it's so clear. Your why is about imagining big possibilities such that you can inspire others. You never know, they might just happen. So to me, my why is taking people either inside our business or outside who want to be a part of the entrepreneurial journey, who want to run a business for themselves. We get people starting in the call center who go on to buy franchises and become owners, people starting in the trucks that do it. And I just love watching people grow. And I love knowing that our systems and processes are somehow a part of that. So it lights me up each and every day. I can tell you right now, it's a hard time in our business. COVID has made it to a point where working remotely is very disconnecting and challenging. Yet we do our best and we still find a way to stay connected every day. We're going through a software challenge, a big rollout that's been extra challenging. And there's days where sometimes you feel like you want to give up, but when you know you have a responsibility to your people to help them get to greatness, that you know that our businesses, our brands are making a difference and changing lives, you stick with it. You stick with the toughness and you just work through it and you get to the other side and you look back and you go, wow, that wasn't easy, but was it sure worthwhile?
So how do you cultivate? I'm curious because I'm very familiar with Simon. I actually have a little bit of history with Simon, not nearly like yours, but back in 2010, he was involved in a project trying to create an online course out of his why concept. And I was, at the time, I was consulting for a company that was the company that was going to release the course. So I got to work directly with Simon and with Kim, who's his COO, only for like a few months. And then it didn't actually materialize, but I got to know them a little bit. But I do remember Simon was kind of going around the office, helping people, kind of the same thing you described, helping them discover their why. And it actually never came around to me. It took me many more years to figure out my why. But it's interesting. But what I noticed was there were some very visionary people in that office, and I got to hear their whys because Simon was there drawing it out of them, right? And your why, all of their whys, my why is basically to be free and inspire others to do the same. Like I'm like a big freedom guy, libertarian, get your hands off my body and my property and my taxes and my food and my kids. And, I just want freedom. And the reason I teach entrepreneurship is because I think in the modern world, it's the closest thing we have to a get out of jail free card. It's to start your own self-sustaining business, life-sustaining business, right?
Of course.
So I know, but what I notice is the universal theme of the whys of a lot of like very successful visionary people is it has that word inspire. You said it, right? To inspire. There's something in us that wants, that just, we didn't decide to be this way. We didn't have to, we were never forced to become this way. And it's not something we have to, manifest as a function of willpower. It just is. You just get off on inspiring other people, right? So my question is, that's great if you have it. What if you don't? What if somebody is like seriously self-reflective and is like, I just want to make money. I just want to acquire material stuff. I don't have that natural call to inspire, to be inspiring. I don't really give a crap. Is there a way? Do you think it's something you can like self-cultivate as you realize that, oh, that's a key to big success? Or do you think it's just kind of like you're born with it or you're not?
I don't think it's about inspiring as much as it is, what's the meaning you want to make in your life?
Okay.
And so for me, I believe there's greater value in making meaning than just setting out to make money. In fact, the more I stop focusing on money, I'm not a big materialistic guy. I'm not the go buy the boats and cars and planes or whatever. I love watching people and things grow. I love attempting the impossible and making it possible together. But the less I seem to focus on money, the more it keeps on coming. And so when you say, hey, does somebody just want money and materialistic things? I've met a lot of successful people and entrepreneurs that seem like they're very, very happy, but with the materialistic things they have, I think most smart people I've met realize that doesn't actually make you happy, at least not for very long, not in a sustainable way. But the meaning, the purpose we have in our lives, I think can make a lot of people happy. I love watching a franchise partner come into our business, and we've got a guy, Paul, who ended up, he wanted an Audi R8. It was his dream car. Great. I would never own one, but he bought one. And I feel proud of the fact that our business, our model helped make his dreams possible. But I know he's one of the most caring guys I've ever met. He gives way more to his people than he gives to himself. So what is that meaning inside someone? Do they have to inspire someone? I think to your question of can you cultivate that? I think just by doing good and by sticking with your purpose and following your own why, whatever it is, the right people will be attracted and be inspired by your example.
Yeah. I mean, that resonates very much with me. I'm curious, you talk about money. There was that bit in, I forget what it was I read about you, where some newspaper published an article about you and they misprinted your prices. I think they priced you significantly above your actual price and significantly above the market, right? And so you were kind of worried, like, oh my gosh, all this publicity is going to go to waste because nobody's going to call because it printed our prices too high. But sure enough, you said tons of people called, right? And I'm curious, because this is something, most of my audience are entrepreneurs or entrepreneurial minded people that are thinking about becoming entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this concept of pricing and value in the market is a really, really important concept that a lot of people don't understand. So can you, first of all, I want to assume that in any given market, 1-800-GOT-JUNK and ditto for your other brands, you're not the cheapest option, I'm going to assume.
We're not.
Can you talk a little bit about the power of pricing for value, or whatever your language is around it, like pricing yourself higher and then trying to level up to the value of the price, and instead of just trying to win and compete on price alone?
Yeah, so it's interesting. A very dear friend of mine and my co-author of my book, Roy H. Williams. He's known as the Wizard of Ads. He does all our radio creative. He's a brilliant marketing mind. And he explained to me years ago, and I buy into this and have explained it many times since, the low cost provider is never the biggest player in the service space. In a product space, let's say Amazon, let's say Best Buy, and you're going to buy a product, in big retail, it's often the low cost provider that wins. Mm-hmm. But you've got infrastructure and robotics and systems and so on that are pushing your product forward. You can't really scale and become the high. If you're the cheapest in services, you're not going to win, because what you're delivering is service with people, and those people cost money. If you want great service, you need the best people. And if you're not paying your people well and treating them right and making sure that they've got the training and the skills and all those things that cost money, you just can't build a great service business. So we realize that the best in the business, in any home service space, in any service business, is generally the ones who are near the higher side of the spectrum. We're not overcharging, we're charging fairly, but we're the higher cost provider because it costs money to do it exceptionally well.
Hey, sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to let you know you can get a free copy of my book, The Millionaire Shortcut, which shows you the fastest way to become a millionaire in the new economy. And there's a special link just for this episode in the description. So thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. Yeah, and I think that's something so many people struggle with internally, again, because they don't believe in themselves. They don't think they're worth charging as much or more than the guy who's got more experience, or the guy who seems more established, or the guy who has, drives a nicer car or whatever. And I want to encourage people as a 3-time bootstrap entrepreneur. Well, many more than 3 times I tried. I'd say 3 times I actually succeeded at bootstrapping. When you charge more for your services, assuming you're a decent ethical person, you naturally backfill with value because you don't want to be overcharging, right? It creates this vacuum pressure that kind of draws out the best you have, because there's this responsibility to live up to the price, right? Okay, I want to pivot to another thing that I saw you talk about in an article that I was reading, where you said that you much preferred the experience of learning to run a business hands-on rather than going to college. Yeah. And I tell me again, how much college did you do? I know you didn't finish.
I did 4 or 5 years, but several universities, and talked my way in because I didn't graduate from high school, but I never finished. Now, to be clear, it's not that I don't love learning. I love learning. I am the most curious person. I drove my parents nuts when I was a kid, question after question after question. I love to learn, but I don't like sitting in classrooms. I'm ADD. I have a hard time focusing, especially if I feel like I don't see value in a subject that I have to learn. So I would get out, and my way of learning, starting a business with no training and just asking people questions. And so one of my favorite stories is when I looked to franchise my business 7 or 8 years in, I went to a bunch of franchise experts. I said, well, who will understand franchising and tell me how to do this? And I went to some senior executives from McDonald's. I went to franchise consultants, a whole ton of people. And I went to about a dozen people, and they all said the same thing. Yeah, I don't think this is franchisable. I don't think you can do it. And I didn't just take their no and their rejection. I said, this is a chance for me to learn. So I asked every person, why isn't it franchisable? What would make it franchisable? What's missing? If you were me, what would you do differently? And I took all these notes and I went and retooled, and I came back to a couple of them and said, okay, here's what I want to do. Here's my vision. Do you think I'm ready? And a couple of people said, yeah, wow, I think you've got this. So it was a very fragmented business, no barriers to entry, as you mentioned earlier. People could come in with a pickup truck and start hauling junk like Brian did. But what I wanted to do was create a brand, a 1-800 number. We would build in every single city this power of building a bigger brand together. I saw that it was so fragmented that it had no customer experience. So I was going to train people and build this school of how to train people how to run franchises. We would have a call center where we would do the booking and dispatch for all of our franchise owners, so they didn't have to work on the admin side, but they could work on growing the sales side of their business and drive bigger revenue. So I created all these things where it became powerful for someone to join us versus going at it alone. And if I didn't ask those franchise consultants and franchise leaders, why not? And I just took their no, it can't be done, I wouldn't have won in the way that we have today.
That's interesting. You kind of found the, like, no, it was like, no, but they didn't say no, but they just said no, but you had the instinct to say, yeah, but what about this? What about this? I'm curious. I have to ask, if you, to the extent you're comfortable sharing, or it's not proprietary, but what were some of the things that made your business, I guess, that sort of insulated it sufficiently to make it franchisable?
Yeah, well, it was creating a brand. So if somebody just goes, hey, I'm buying your system of hauling junk, anyone can go sling junk in the back of a truck. But what we created was a one size, one fits all type truck and system that people would buy from our truck retailer. But it was branded 1-800-GOT-JUNK. It made it easy where somebody
so it's really the marketing was a huge part of what you.
Yeah, having a brand that, you know, when somebody calls us in San Francisco and they move to Atlanta and they go, oh, I see these 1-800-GOT-JUNK trucks everywhere, and they call us. There's power in building a national brand.
Yeah,
you know, we go to Starbucks in any airport because you know the brand,
right?
The city. So it was building a brand, but we had to look and feel like a brand. So my visioning, my painted picture, one of the things I said is we will build the FedEx of junk removal. I wanted people to know that this was a clean, shiny trucks, friendly, uniform driver type business. Just like you see on the truck here. This wasn't us just being like Joe's junk removal. Right. This was getting out there in a big way and doing it right and building a powerful brand with amazing people. And we did that. We didn't start that way. We made lots of mistakes and lessons learned, but we got rid of those barriers. And I think one of the biggest things was technology and the customer service center, being able to call into a call center, and we would do all the booking and dispatch for 2,000 plus trucks that we have on the road. That takes a lot of work away from franchise owners. And then you've got a consistent level of service. No matter who calls from what city, they get that same warm, professional greeting and set of systems that we can control the consistency of. So we got rid of the barriers, or we were able to franchise and create a different set of barriers that made it hard for competitors to come in, because they just understood the man with truck type will haul junk sort of business. And we started creating a brand way ahead of our competition, and we were the first to do it. And we're the world's largest junk removal company, and we're now trying to do the same thing with painting and window washing, gutter cleaning.
And how many years again did it take to go from buying a truck and starting your own junk hauling business to successful franchising?
Took me 10 years to franchise. Took me 15 years to get to some profitability in franchising. But it wasn't really till 20 years that we started hitting some momentum and getting our stride. So that is a long time. That is patience. But I think I was so driven by purpose. Now our franchise partners got to a level they were thrilled with much quicker than 20 years. But as the leader who had to believe, who had to be so patient. I mean, I've done it differently, I think, than you, where you've had 3 really successful businesses that you've piloted. I've got 3, but they're all very similar. They're almost like one. It's a home service franchise type business. but I've really stuck where, grow where you're planted has been my philosophy. Find something that I can do really, really well and stick with it my entire life and just keep building bigger, better, growing great people.
Well, I love that philosophy, grow where you're planted. What I figured out in 2008, when I was coming off of business failure number 10 or 12, depending on what exactly you count as a business, I discovered that I had some aptitude, and mostly I became a really passionate student of how to acquire customers on the internet. Basically, I became a direct response marketing, devotee.
Yeah.
And that's really what I'm great at. And frankly, that's a pretty good thing to be great at, is the ability to acquire customers. So for 5 years, I did it as an affiliate marketer for other people's products. Then for almost 6 years, I did it as an agency, helping small and medium-sized businesses acquire customers for their business. And then I started an online education company that's acquired 180,000 students in less than 3 years. But to your point, I'm really only good at one thing, and everything else I'm good enough at, or I find people that are better than me, which is the other part of the equation. I have to acknowledge that we have something in common that I've literally never met anyone else that has this in common with me.
What's
high
that?
School dropouts who talked their way into college.
Love it.
Yeah. So tell me, I got to hear your story. How do you, because people have asked me this, how do you approach an admissions officer at a university with no high school diploma and even get them to entertain the idea of enrolling you?
Maybe it's in my DNA to be curious and ask questions, but I've already talked about it a bit, the whole why not? Like, what would make this work? I went 3 times to the admissions office and I'm like, I have to get in. All my friends are getting in. I'm 1 course short of a diploma. Like, what's it going to take? I wrote letters. I told my story. I told how I had learned and what I was going to do differently this next time around if I got a second chance, and begged and pleaded and did what great entrepreneurs do. And, even though I wasn't one yet, I sold myself.
Yeah.
And I got in. What about you? How did you talk your way in?
So I had a decent SAT score. So I knew that I had them like on the fence, like at least considering this thing that was literally against the university policy. Like the university policy is you must have a high school diploma. But I could tell she was like, we don't see a lot of college or high school dropouts with that SAT score. So like, there's something here, but she's like, but I'm sorry, my hands are tied. Right. And so I went home and I'm like, okay, I know from experience that you can always get people if you can get people into a place psychologically that's far enough away from where they spend most of their time, they start entertaining possibilities that they wouldn't normally consider. That's how for example, my wife, how did I get my wife to go out with me? Right. Is I got her to entertain a possibility she never would have considered, by saying, let me try to create an experience that's not like her normal life. I mean, literally as a strategy, like when you're not the best looking, most athletic, coolest guy in the room, you got to be strategic. Right. So I went home and I'm like, okay, what could I do that would really draw her into another world and at least get her thinking differently? And I found this short story that I'd written that was basically a story of a little kid getting lost at an amusement park and kind of having like an Alice in Wonderland type experience at this amusement park. And I was, obviously it was me. And the story was called Graceland. And anyways, it has an ending where, the kid finds his parents, comes home from the park, but he's forever transformed from that experience. So I just brought her the short story and I said, listen, read this. And if you feel, if you're not moved by this, or you don't see something in this that, is interesting to you, I'll leave and I will bother you no further. And she read the short story and she came back and she said, honestly, I don't even know that the short story was that good, but the fact that you went home and dug up a short story that was a fantasy of a little kid getting lost in an amusement park and brought it to me, I can tell you're just a different type of thinker. So sure, why not? Let's do it.
Changed your life.
That's basically how it went. Yeah. So,
and that's the power of possibility and people willing to go out on a limb and just say, Can you just take a look at this? What do you think? And so you and I both having that pretty fun element in common that we talked our way into college, having no high school degree. What I think happened for you and I both is somebody saw something in us and believed in us and made an exception. We have a franchise owner, Tim Milner, who's in DC area. He came to us to try and start a franchise with Wow One Day Painting. We took him through the whole extensive interview process and we said, no, we didn't think he could do it. And he was just like, why not? Like, I want to do this. I can do this. We said, okay, if you really think you can do this, we're going to go set you up with your neighboring franchise where you live, Craig Merrill's. And Craig took him under his wing and they worked together for a month or two. And Craig calls us up and goes, Brian, I know you said no to Tim. If you do not bring him on as a franchise partner, you're nuts. This guy has the biggest heart. He's smart. He can do this. I've seen it. Like, why did you say no? And so Tim had someone who saw something in him, Craig, and he said, he's got to do this. And today, Craig just celebrated his 5-year anniversary with Wow One Day. He's built an awesome business. He's joined the entrepreneur organization. He's a leader there. Like it's amazing what people can do when given a chance. But I think, takeaway for me is just remembering that people have to ask for that opportunity. Tim could have walked away from us and said, okay, you said no, thanks very much. I'll go find something else. He's like, why not? I can do this. What will it take?
Well, you mentioned Chris Voss. I mean, in Never Split the Difference, he talks about the conversation doesn't really start until you get to know. Most salespeople are all about getting multiple yeses and trying to get to yes. And Chris says, no. He says, people say no because it's empowering to say no. Think about what was the first empowering thing you did as a small child? It was say no. Like when you start to develop that sense of self and realize that I'm a discrete being in the universe and I'm not just this blend of, I'm not just merged into everything else. I'm an autonomous being. The way you declare that is you start saying no to everything. It's annoying. I have a 5-year-old. It's always saying no, right? It's super empowering for human beings. You have to gift people the opportunity to say no into conversation so that they know that they remind themselves that they're an autonomous being and they get that flood of endorphins, of neurochemicals that comes from saying no. And if you find your way through the no, you can get to some of the best conversations and some of the richest outcomes you could possibly get to. That's what Chris Voss teaches us. And it sounds like the way you heard no on the franchising deal is the same way you heard no on the college deal. And it's the same way that your guy heard no from you about the franchising deal. So it seems like, there's always some big takeaway from every one of these conversations. I never know what it's going to be, but it feels like what we're dancing around here is falling in love with hearing the word no and finding your way through it.
Totally. The power of no. I mean, people hate being told no, but I would guess, are you better at dealing with no from being a kid onwards to today? Are you better at dealing with no than most people?
I have been putting myself in situations that it was like I was a glutton for no. Yeah. My whole life, I've been putting myself in situations to be told no.
Yeah. So I think that, that's what I'm seeing. I know this is your podcast and you highlighted that, but the power of no, if we could inspire anyone watching or listening to the next time they hear no, go, but why not? Ask some questions like that might lead you to a life-changing moment where you meet your wife, you start a business, you get a promotion. People take no and they get deflated, but like, what an opportunity. There's a gift in unwrapping that no.
Well, and to kind of tie back to what Evan said about people not believing in themselves, I think that how you respond to no is probably as close a thing as there is to a metric around how much you believe in yourself. Mm-hmm. How do you respond when people tell you no?
Yeah.
And I think we look at the world, and it's actually interesting what's going on in the world right now, because there's actually a lot of what I would call civil disobedience in the world right now. Mm-hmm. Not to get, I don't want to go political, but I mean, there's stuff happening that people are saying no. they're saying no to being told no.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of interesting, but it's a lot of entrepreneurs. I notice that's one thing, because my Instagram feed is, I mean, if there's one defining characteristic of my Instagram feed, it's mostly entrepreneurial people. They're the ones that are super comfortable saying no, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, this is funny. I'm taking notes in my own interview because I'm just sitting there. I'm like, oh, I'm learning stuff from you, and I'm getting all inspired here. This is great. If people could only understand that it's okay to fail, it's okay to be told no, but it's how you react to that. Such a powerful thing.
Did you have any early influences that modeled successful failure for you?
That's a great question. I don't know if I did. I don't know if I realized it until I started failing myself. And I felt like I was failing a lot. But my eyes opened up to failure being something that it's a necessary ingredient in life. It's a necessary ingredient in success. My middle child was in ski school, and she must have been 7 or 8. And she came home crying. She's like, I don't want to ski anymore. I hate it. I'm like, why? She goes, because I fall all the time and it hurts. And then you sort of shift the thinking to, but falling is like how you learn and how you get better. Like, you fell today. That's amazing. And somehow my words landed, and she went back, and the next day she's like, guess what? Big smile at the end of the day. I fell today. It's like, that's awesome. And if you can embrace that failure, like, is there ever an Olympic skier who didn't get to where they are without falling along the way a bunch? So it's just, it's a mental shift, but where it's helped me as an entrepreneur or as a parent or anything is I go, every time I make a mistake, I go, okay, what better thing is going to come from this thing I'm not happy with? And it gets us there each and every time.
How old are your kids?
I've got a 17, a 14, and a 9-year-old.
So this is a very apropos question for you then. What are your thoughts on a college education in the modern times?
So an interesting thing about me is I've never asked my kids what they want to be when they grow up. I like to get a sense of what they want to do, what they want to stand for, what they love. But I've never said to them, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to go to college? What are you going to be when you grow up? I don't ask them that because I want them to find their own way. And I try and give them curiosity and a thirst for knowledge and so on, and show them new experiences. You know, when we have done trips, different places in the world, volunteering to help build a school in India, you know, things like that. But I want them to find their own way. So my oldest daughter has just recently been talking to me about college. And I just ask questions and listen. It's just, you know, so I don't know if I have an opinion on whether or not on the value, you know, as an entrepreneur, the best way for me and most entrepreneurs I know is you learn best to start a business by getting out there and making some mistakes, failing and tweaking, and off you go. If you want to be a doctor like my father, I'm pretty darn glad my dad has the education he has, right? So I think it depends on what you want to do. And college isn't all about, as I've seen with so many of our people in our company, what they studied and what they do for a living are often very different things. But you still learn something in college, how to manage your time, how to make friends, how to become a leader. So it's a tough one. It's definitely not a black and white one for me.
Interesting. Cool.
If my kid said to me, I'm not going to go to college like my dad, great.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want to do? Let's talk about that. How can I help?
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. I've got 2 boys. I have 4 kids. 2 of them though are of age. One's 17, one's 18. Where it's becoming the relevant conversation.
Sure.
And same thing. I think one's going to go, one isn't. And I believe there's a path. Wherever you go, there you are. Right. It's not about where you are or what you're doing. It's about who you are. Like you said, hire happy people. Be a happy person. Be a positive person. Anyways, hey, lo and behold, we're like out of time. So I want to know, how can my audience continue this conversation with you? Where can they go to get, do you do social content? I know you have a book. I know you had a podcast. I don't know if you're still actively doing your podcast. Like steer my people. Where can they go to get more?
We're doing another podcast called Founder Stories. I'm in the process of signing off on a second book, but I think that people that have things in common are attracted to each other. And I don't know exactly what your audience is looking for, but I'm all over social. We're out there. They can just Google Brian Scudamore and find our social content on whatever channel they're best into. I just, again, love watching people grow and love seeing people take the leap into a small business, and really proud of what we've built, but more importantly, the people that we've built it with. So if anyone wants to learn more about anything we do, check it out. Send me a message on LinkedIn or Instagram, whatever I can do to help.
If you loved that episode, then you're definitely going to love this one. Check it out.
Get 1 degree better every day. At 211 degrees, it's still water. At 212, bang, suddenly you're in the next level, and it's a whole different power dynamic. If you're relentless and you just do a little bit more every day, then suddenly, bang, you're in the next level.